Hi, I'm John Knotts, and welcome to the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. It's the 13th of February, 2016, and we're here at Metro East Community Media Studios in Gresham, Oregon. And we have a wonderful guest with us today as we do our stories with veterans and let them express their feelings. We have a retired First Sergeant, United States Army, Tina Kennedy. And if I were to say it in military terms, it would be Sergeant Kennedy T. But I'm not going to do that today. So, welcome, Tina.
Thank you very much, John.
Now, to start off with, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school?
I grew up right here in Oregon in Coos Bay.
A local.
Yes.
Okay. And you went to high school where?
I went to high school at Milwaukee High School. Go Mustangs, Milwaukee, Oregon.
Which is pretty much located in southeast Portland,
Yes.
Milwaukee, in the city of Milwaukee. Now, I know that you know a man by the name of Ken Buckles.
Yes.
Tell me something about Ken Buckles.
Ken Buckles was actually my strength training teacher in high school. He always was in the weight room when we were in there. And God, I remember him for all 4 years of high school. He was always the coach of the football team, coach of the wrestling. He was everybody around Milwaukee. Definitely a Mustang.
And what did he do that may have been instrumental in you making a decision about the military?
Well, he helped me, and he always pushed me as a woman to go further. And I ended up being the top weightlifter of the year. So it was kind of neat. I benched 165 pounds, so I was all big for a woman.
Oh, I guess. Now, he had something to do with Living History Day for a number of years at Milwaukee High School. Could you touch on that?
What he started, and this is after I had left, gone to the Army, but he started a Living History Day there at Milwaukee High School, where every year they would have a big event for all the veterans, and it was pretty large. People would come in from all over the state to attend the ceremonies and stuff, and they would give tribute to veterans.
Quite a man and quite a project, and I know they've had people come in from all over the United States, and that's where I met several of the Tuskegee Airmen, which there aren't too many of those folks left anymore. But did you get an idea you wanted to go into the Army or go into the military because of what Ken did? What was your inspiration?
I think it started, my dad, my father was actually what I thought back then. He told me he was in the Army. Well, I realize now that I'm older that he was an Army reservist, but he always put on his uniform and went to drill, and that was really big for me. So from the time I was about probably 13, instead of what the normal girls had the pop bands on their wall, I had a uniform and a Be All You Can Be symbol all over my bedroom. My mom knew. My mom knew I was joining pretty young, so.
But that is inspiration because whether somebody's a reservist or active military or they spent 2 years, 3 years, or retired after 20 or 25 years, it's still the time they spent, the sacrifices that they make that a lot of people, and that's why we do this program, a lot of people are unfamiliar with what folks like you do and the thousands that have gone before and will come after that never get to tell their story. So we can take this opportunity to have you express some of your feelings. And
Awesome.
if you get some feelings, feel free to express them. So you graduated and you
Yes.
joined the military. You decided to go in the Army.
Yes.
Where'd you go to boot camp?
Well, at 17 years old, Mom signed the release to let me join early. So as soon as I graduated, I was gone 4 days later, and I shipped off to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So.
Now I know that the Marine Corps has 2 boot camps. Navy is at the Great Lakes, and I believe Air Force is at Lackland. But how many boot camp facilities are there for the Army now?
I'm not sure. Back then we had 8.
8, really?
Yeah, 8 different ones, and now I think there's only one that's not co-ed now. So back then there was only 2 locations women could go. This was back in 1992. There was only 2 different basic trainings that a female could go, where they were co-ed, and they still were separated but co-ed on the post.
So you ended up 17 years old and made a choice to go in the military, and you're obviously not in a comfortable environment like most of us. We took that leap into the unknown, so to speak. Give me your feelings, say the first night or the first day or the first week in boot camp.
Well, seeing as how I knew I wanted to join for so long and I was so excited about it, when I got there I had a huge smile on my face, and my nickname in basic training was actually Smiley. And there was me and another female who were both 6 foot tall, and so they called the one drill sergeant. Was really fun. He was a tall white guy, but they were so mean and miserable trying to scare us, and they could not scare the smile off my face, and they thought it irritated them, but I was always smiling.
Now, how long was boot camp for you?
It was 8 weeks long.
8, okay. And how'd you fare in class? How did you graduate? What did you accomplish in boot camp?
Well, well, it was my buddy, my battle buddy, and I can't even think of her name now. That's crazy. I could see her face, and you go through the ups and downs. I don't know. You start out within the first week, and you're crying for your mom, and can I please use the phone and call mom? I think I made a mistake. To, nothing exciting in boot camp. It was challenging. It was definitely the highlight of my life at that point. It was so amazing just to challenge yourself and the feeling you get from graduating and doing something and accomplishing something. It was really amazing.
It is self-achievement, and if one hasn't been there, they'll never understand it. If you have not been there, you won't understand that feeling of accomplishment, that achievement, that personal goal that you reached, and the proud feeling that comes with it. And then you graduate and you put on the uniform. So after boot camp, what other specialized training did you receive? Where did you end up going? What was your MOS? In Marine Corps, we called it MOS.
I started out as a 71 Lima. When I joined, it was an administrative specialist. They didn't allow females to do any exciting jobs. There was only support roles. And I remember my recruiter telling me, well, you can go in as admin, but you can go to any kind of unit you want to go to. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go in as admin. And actually, my first assignment was in Panama with the MPs. They said, well, we're going to send you to be with the MP unit, which was nice, because then I'm kind of like, I get to experience all the MP stuff, but I'm actually doing all their paperwork for them. So it was kind of neat choosing that job. I believe my recruiter was absolutely correct, because I got to go with MPs, field artillery. In the beginning of my career, I went with all different kinds of units.
Well, that sounds exciting, and it's quite a broad spectrum of experiences. So you were in Panama?
Yes.
And how long?
We went in Panama in 1993, again, stationed with the MPs, 534th, and it was right when Cuba, there were all those problems in Cuba, Guantanamo Bay.
Yes.
Okay. We actually, how Guantanamo Bay set up their conservation camps for the Cubans, we also set up a conservation camp in Panama. So it was like their trickle off. We had a huge conservation camp right there in Panama. They called it Operation Distant Haven. We ended up deploying down to Suriname, which is a little country in Brazil, right south of Brazil. It's a tiny country. And we built a conservation camp there, and we're waiting for the Cubans to come in from Guantanamo Bay. Something happened. We were there for 6 months. They ended up not coming to that location. They wanted to forward them to Panama. So we all came back and went to Panama, and they built another camp in Panama, which is where we actually had the Cuban refugees we were there for 9 months. So
this is one of the reasons, and one of the most important reasons we do this show, is because I would have never guessed what you just explained with the Cuban refugees in Panama and the Canal Zone. My father was during World War II. He called it Canal Zone. Those things that go on behind the scenes that you and thousands of other people are involved in, that do sacrifice for the country, that do build the nation and what we have today over the years, that go unheralded, so to speak. And what did you leave that experience with? Did you have any feelings, any thoughts?
Well, truthfully, that experience was my first major, what I consider a conflict. Over in Guantanamo Bay, what we heard had happened, and nobody gave us the absolute truth, but while we were at the camp, it was a humanitarian mission. Everybody was peaceful. We had no weapons. And what was happening is my commander and my first sergeant were interviewing these Cubans one by one. They'd bring them in. They both spoke Spanish, and they would interview the Cubans, talk about their lifestyle and what they'd done, trying to figure out if they were like a good or bad person, if you want to call it, just trying to get a general census of them. And if they passed their interview process, they would give them a green card, and they would transfer them out of the camp and allow them to come in the United States. So we were basically just vetting all the Cuban refugees. We were vetting them through this process. We had a jail set up. So some of the Cubans that would come in and talk to my first sergeant commander, they were not so good people, or if they thought they were criminals, they would move them over and put them in the jail. So we actually had a jail cell there at the conservation camp. What we heard happened, one day they all of a sudden started coming towards the gate, and they all came in big wards. There must have been 400 Cubans in our camp, and they all came on these big 8-foot metal gates. We had the whole compound surrounded, and they started pushing on this gate to knock this gate over. They wanted to get out of the compound. So here's the MP unit, and I'm just a secretary at the time. I had the basic, the training on how to use riot gear, but I was not an MP. And here they were pushing this gate down. They were coming in and they were knocking this fence down. So everybody's a little upset. We had no weapons, no way to protect ourselves. We found out later on that what had happened was one of the younger females in Guantanamo Bay, something had happened to her. She got injured or something happened. One of the MPs injured her. And so word got through on their cell phones so they were very upset with us. So they in turn knocked down the gate, came out. We put on our riot gear, and we had to go through a full-fledged riot of these Cubans who had made homemade weapons. They had shanks made with, little. They'd taken and they shaved apart rocks and everything else, and they had these shanks, homemade sticks, and they were fighting us. The interesting part, and what's funny that a lot of people don't know, is I have a lot of T-shirts that were made after the event, and you show these Cubans holding a rock and throwing rocks, and we're playing baseball with them with our batons. And it was this funny shirt because nobody realized that they didn't have any weapons, so they picked up boulders and started throwing boulders at us because they wanted to get through the line. And all we have is a plastic shield, this shield in front of us, and a plastic head face and a stick. So as we're standing there and the boulders are hitting our shields and they're falling apart and our shields are breaking, we have this metal piece and I have a stick, and everything else broke apart. So it was quite an interesting ordeal. I remember calling my mom. They had all these wonderful things on the news talking about how great and everything was going so good with the refugees. And I, after the whole thing occurred, I'm calling Mother saying, "Oh my God, Mom, you won't believe what just happened. And no, it's not like it is on the news." Of course, not something that Mom wants to hear, but.
So, excuse me, your perspective, and what I'm hearing is that the news media is reporting that we have a wonderful humanitarian experiment going on.
Oh, yes.
And we're vetting people. While you're down there fighting with sticks and stones.
Yes.
In some desolate country, I don't understand the disconnect with reporting. Are we trying to put a happy face on these things? Because that's an experience that, again, I wouldn't have known about. That a simple routine duty station basically turns chaotic. So how long were you there in Panama?
I was stationed, it was a 3-year tour, and that Operation Safe Haven happened at the end of the tour. I remember that was like Mom's first understanding of, I said, "Mom, you can't watch the news. The news really means nothing. Please don't watch the social or the media because you're not going to learn what's really going on." So everybody in my family that's close to me basically started calling me every time they wanted to know something because you can't believe what they put out there, what they want you to know. And I think that's what I don't appreciate about media is that I believe that they only tell you the piece that you want to hear or how they can manipulate it to make it for what they want to get out of the subject. I mean, it was quite an ordeal. It was horrible. Actually, my roommate there got stripped down and was injured very badly. They rioted and they tore her clothes off and.
Oh my.
Yeah, and it was a horrible experience. I mean, it was the first part that I, at 19 years old, here I am in a foreign country, dealing with these people that were very angry and very agitated with us. So.
That's amazing. I had the same feeling at 19. What have I gotten myself into?
What did I do? Yes.
I should be at a Friday night football game. So when you completed your tour of duty in Panama, what were you assigned to then?
After Panama, I was so excited after this point, and the MPs had been so great to me with all this excitement, that I really wanted to go to airborne school. And it was a big joke because everybody was saying girls don't go to airborne school at this time. It was in 95. And I was like, yes, they do, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make it, And so I actually started picking up the phone and calling different assignments. And I wanted a really tough assignment since I was, feeling like my career was going places. So I ended up calling. They got me out this number to the 1st Special Forces Group in Fort Lewis. And they were just starting to integrate women into support roles into the Special Forces Group. And it's interesting because everybody in Panama was like, "You're not going to make it," half of them, and half of my buddies were like, "No, here." I actually had a gentleman give me his airborne wings. He ripped him off his uniform and said, "Here, take these with you, you're going to make it." So I kept those airborne wings in my pocket my whole entire time in airborne school. Came down orders. Went to airborne school, Fort Benning, Georgia.
Yeah, Fort Benning. Yes, everybody. That's the jump school.
Yes,
Fort
that's
Benning.
jump school. And it was pretty tough. There was 18 women when I started. 18 of us we ended up being in Delta Company. Wow, 1502, God, it's so long ago. But we were in Delta Company, and there was 12 girls that started the course. And, you're running everywhere in boots, and you're running back and forth to all the training sites, and you're the old black combat boots. So you had to keep up. There was no falling out. You fell out of a formation, you were gone. So, blisters run amok, blood coming off your feet everywhere. But I think by the 4th week of airborne school, we were down to 3 girls. And then when we got to the final jump stage where we started actually jumping, there were only 3 women left. And it was myself, another female who was an E5, I believe, and a captain. And We did our first jump, and the captain got injured. She hurt her ankle, so she couldn't complete airborne school. So at graduation day, it ended up being me and one other female that kind of came across the line. And my mom, I actually have a picture of my mom pinning my airborne wings on. My mom got so excited.
So you completed airborne school. So you were basically in the inaugural when they opened these areas up to women.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because going to airborne school and then heading off to that position at Special Forces Group was like a huge thing, because they had never had women in any kind of support roles or anything in the, Special Forces or in Ranger Bat or any of that stuff. No women were allowed. And I think with all the studies they did, the way they explained it to me is that having women in the units, even in support roles, brought the testosterone levels in the units down, truthfully, and it helped them. It helped them with their stress and anxiety and stuff to have women around. So they were testing this out. This was the whole concept.
That is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Well, now they've opened up so many areas with the experimentation. Almost everything is open now, all areas of the military. And I don't know that I have mixed feelings on that. I think that's fine.
See, I
think it depends on the individual.
It does
Because,
depend on
my
the
goodness,
individual.
I ran into guys I didn't trust. I ran into guys that.
I agree with you, but it does depend on the individual. And unfortunately, we all know people take it too far. Okay, prime example. There was 5 of us women that went to Special Forces Group on this special assignment. And then when I got there, it was a female captain who was also airborne, myself, and 2 other females, 2 Spec 4s, but they had made it through airborne school. So when you go to as a support role to Special Forces Group back then, you wore a maroon beret. All the SF guys wore green berets. And then if you were a support role in an airborne unit, you got to wear your maroon beret. And these were positions like admin, finance, riggers, all that kind of stuff that women could actually do, just that piece of it. So we all put on our berets, and we were very proud of them. And so this is the first time you really saw a lot of women, in maroon berets, which meant when you put on your Class A uniform, you got to blouse your boots.
There you go.
And it was really neat. And it was a very distinct feeling, to be able to walk around like that in your uniform. And then, unfortunately, we had a brand new PFC female come in. She didn't want to go to airborne school. She didn't even attempt to go to airborne school. But when she came in, she then in turn got to wear the beret, and she was not airborne. So this is where the problem started, because you're always going to have those 1 or 2 individuals that are going to push the line, and that's why I disagree with it, because she really brought a very bad name to that whole project when it was going. I had been there about 9 months when she showed up, and I was having a blast. The guys were really neat with me. In the beginning, they were a little bit shied. I was only an E5, but towards, 8, 9 months in, they were like, "Come on, Tina, you want to go jump?" And they came and got me at work one day and said, "You want to go jump out of a helicopter?" It's like, heck yeah, it sounds fucking awesome, man. So they said, "Go put your bathing suit on. We're going to go jump." And that was right here at Fort Lewis. And I'm thinking, I'm going to jump out of a helicopter. Oh, my goodness. So me being, I was only, 21 at this time, 22, still a little bit what I consider immature. I go running back and put on a sports bra and some little half shorty things, thinking I'm set. Well, we end up getting suited up. They take the helicopter out. And the guys were like, "Come on, we're going to do this. This is going to be awesome." And I'm ecstatic because I've never done a water jump before. It's like my first time. And I'm literally in a bikini and a parachute. I mean, I was like, "What am I doing up here?" I told my...
So somebody thought maybe you were involved in it's not a fashion show, Tina. Come on.
Exactly. That's the
show.
big joke. And at that point in my life, I was so young. But, we get pushed out the door. We're all excited. And I told Mom, all I remember is I'm coming down in this parachute. As I'm looking down and I see jellyfish. We went over the Puget Sound.
Really?
And I'm jumping in and I see all these jellyfish, okay? And I'm like, "Oh my God." And I'm screaming at the guy next to me who's probably like 400 feet in the air. What do I do? Oh my God, there's fucking jellyfish. Steer away from the jellyfish.
Steer away from the jellyfish.
You
Now
think
let me guess, you're wearing boots and a bathing suit.
Yes.
You had boots on though.
Yes, I had boots on.
Well, there's a fashion statement.
If I could have pictures of this, it's hilarious. But so I get in the water, and you're steering and you're scared to death and you're falling. And I'm, "Oh my God, away from there." Well, they also did not tell me, and this is kind of like the cherry jumper, the joke. I hit the water, and as soon as I hit the water, your parachute automatically goes under your legs. That's just the way it does. When you hit the water, your parachute gets tangled. So I feel, in turn, things on my legs. So I'm screaming, "Oh my God," for the boat. "Come get me, I'm getting bit by a jellyfish."
You think jellyfish have attacked you?
Yes, and so I was literally having a heart attack. The guys are die laughing in their little boat as they come over to get me. It's your chute. And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's my parachute." I was so embarrassed, mortified. But, I do have to say, water jumping, You get all the excitement, all the amazing stuff coming down, and no landing. It's so wonderful because there's no pain, there's no shock, there's no anything. You just hit the water, and it's pretty dang amazing.
Except for the chill in the water.
Except for how freaking cold it is, yes.
It's a little chilly.
Yes.
So you've been in at this point 4 years, 5 years?
About 5 years, yeah.
E5, that's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but you've earned it.
Yes.
You've worked hard. So you complete jump school, which is quite an honor when you pin the wings on.
My mother did that too, real
Oh,
quick.
boy.
So my mom is all excited. She's been very involved in my career. My mother comes to airborne graduation, and she is ecstatic, and she's running down. They let your parents come in if they wanted to actually pin your wings. And I have a picture of this incident. She said, I read online how you're supposed to get your wings, and you're supposed to get them, and you're supposed to get what's called blood wings. And I'm like, Mom, you don't know what you're doing. This is my mother. Mom, you don't know what you're doing. The black hats thought it was hilarious. So Mom comes in to give me my wings, and she's pinning them on my chest, and she nails me, and I'm bleeding down my mom gave me blood wings, and she was like, yay, I did it right, you got your blood wings. And my mom, who's an amazing person, thought that was the neatest thing, that she gave me my blood wings. I had to pull my wings out of my collarbone with with pliers. They get stuck, but that's the exciting part. I still have 2 little scars.
I've seen that happen in a few instances where they put the wings or ribbons and everybody gets a shot and they drive it into your skin, and I'm thinking, I'm glad I missed that part of the inauguration.
Well, that's called hazing now. We
Hazing,
don't do it anymore.
Yeah. And the other thing, you mentioned blisters. And it brought a thought to me in watching some of the new shows with the current military. And still, they train hard. My heart goes out to everybody who's serving. But I have a hard time looking at a show where there is a recruit with blisters on their feet crying, and a corpsman or a medic there helping them out, and they go on light duty. They never did that with us.
And they put
They
them in
didn't do that
tennis
with you
shoes.
either.
No.
If you got a blister, what happened?
Well, you suck it up. You put a bunch of what's that stuff called, moleskin around it, and you sucked it up, and you put on your boots and went forward.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're not going to take care of yourself. You're going to get blistered on. You're going to cause somebody to get killed in the combat zone because you got a stupid blister.
Yep.
That's what we heard.
Yep.
Things have changed now. Oh, you have a blister? Oh,
That's
I
nice.
feel bad. Let me take care of it for you. That part I'm having a hard time accepting, the touchy-feely aspect of the military. I don't know if that's good or bad.
You know, coming from that old military, like you and I were with, like you said, busting through with the moleskin and everything else, to being a first sergeant in the new Army and having a lot of soldiers that, I really had to take care of. And I think it's not just the military. I think it's our whole society. I mean, you look at, it's the same concept of, we used to go out and ride our bike. We'd go right up hills, we'd stay out till past dark, we'd go roll around in the mud, we'd be outside. Now, you look like a drone going outside with all your pads, and you're not allowed to ride a bike without a helmet. And I'm going, for the small amount of injuries that, that we would have occurred, I can't even see how you've ruined society with kids. I mean, like my daughter, I didn't put a helmet on her at all. I said, if you're going to fall and scrape yourself, I want you to get injured. I want you to feel some pain. That may sound sadistic, but I mean, I want her to grow up to be, better than what I see these kids.
Be a child. Excuse me, but I agree with you. Society has changed and softened the kids up in a nanny state, and not like I look back from my father and generations back. They came up the hard way. They learned. They grew up with grit. They went out and worked. They raised families. They were in the military. Never talked about it. That was just expected.
Yep.
Today, I know, looking back, I don't need somebody looking over my shoulder trying to tell me how to survive or what I need to eat or need to wear a helmet type thing. I don't need that. I think those folks ought to go find the life that works for them and stay out of mine. And I know that you must feel the same way in the changes that have taken place. So after jump school, now you did spend some time in the Middle East.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, let's, real quick, jump school. This is a very important story.
That's what I want to hear. I want to hear important.
Yes. So I'm jumping at airplanes. Everything's great. That was when I met my husband, who was an Army Ranger, or my former husband. I met an Army Ranger, and of course, he would come to get me. We started dating, and he would come on the SF compound to come get me for lunch. And he had his black beret at the time, because Rangers had black and SF had green. And so he would come to the compound to come get me. And oh, they were very angry, and it was always like a battle. She's ours, you can't have her. And he would get, just harassed constantly to come and get me and take me to lunch or something. So I got married. I think I was an E5. I'm pretty sure I was an E5. It was 1996. I ended up getting married. Lo and behold, 6 months later, I find out I'm pregnant. Now, something's going on with me. Within 3 months, now back then I was in such good shape that I would miss my period for months, and it wasn't even a question. But I could tell something was wrong, and I was in perfect physical condition. And I kept going to the OBGYN there at Fort Lewis, and I kept asking, something's wrong with me. Can you guys please tell me, I think something's wrong. I might be pregnant or something. They're like, no. They did blood tests. No, you're not pregnant. They did everything. Urine tests. Every couple weeks I was in there. I'm telling you, something's wrong with my body. I finally did a blood test. I was 4.5 months pregnant when the military said, oh my God, you are pregnant and you need to stop everything. So here I am jumping at airplanes, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, drinking Jack Daniels on all my off time, and I'm 4.5 months pregnant. So my husband and I had a talk, and this was back, I love my husband more than anything, so he said, you really need to get out. We both can't risk our life every day. Well, I had been jumping while I was pregnant. So my daughter had 4 airborne jumps while she was in the womb. So my daughter is actually airborne. We gave her little wings when she was born. But so fast forward to, I'm fighting with the unit now because at this point I had built a name for myself and I was just like one of the guys. And I didn't want to wear my beret when I was pregnant because I didn't believe, as soon as they put me on profile that said I couldn't jump, I was no longer airborne. So I took off my maroon beret and I put on my leg cap, as we call it, the regular old, and my first sergeant had a fit. And we fought day to day. I would wear my leg cap everywhere I went. I said, I'm on profile. I'm not airborne. I'm not going to be like this PFC over here who wants to wear her airborne beret and she's not airborne. I'm wearing my leg cap. So we fought, and this went on for about 4 months. And he just ridiculed me, yelled at me every time he saw me, and I was not giving in. So that's why I got out. I was 6.5 months pregnant, and I got out of the Army. My husband and I talked about it, and we said, you're right. I said, you're a Ranger. You're gone all the time. We can't both risk our life. I need to get out. So I got out, 4 months, had the baby, realized that was a big mistake. I missed my career so much. Mm-hmm. So she was about 8 months old when I came back in the Army, and I just came right back in a year and 2 months later. So like the Air Force gives you a year off. The Air Force has a program where if you have a baby, they'll give you a year, and then you can come right back in, no problems, no harm, no foul. They never had that for the Army. So I did that just basically on my own terms. So I was honorably discharged, took the Chapter 8.
Oh, you had to re-enlist?
Yeah, I had to discharge completely. So I did a Chapter 8, which is for pregnancy, and I was almost 7.5 months pregnant when I got out. So I get out, I stayed in the reserves, just doing 1 weekend a month because they were much more understanding of the pregnancy. And then I just came back in, and 99 is when I came back in again, and I came back in as a recruiter. So that was when my husband had gotten his ROTC scholarship. He was going to Portland State. The only job I could do to support the family was to be a recruiter in Portland. So that was when I came back in, signed up to be a Army recruiter in Portland. So I recruited right here in Milwaukee, the same recruiting station that I went to. I recruited there from, I think Gabrielle was 2, so it would have been 99 to 2001. I was a recruiter right here, right over by Rex Putnam High School in Milwaukee, and I did recruiting duty. So that was the next chapter of my life. So that was E6, then I get promoted to E6, I go into recruiting. Recruiting was just, I don't even want to talk about recruiting. It was the most horrible experience of my life. So recruiting is 3 years. In that 3 years, I received my gold badge with all my sapphires, my ring, my Glennie Morale Award. You have this big award I get to wear because I put in over 110 kids in that 3 years I was recruiting.
Oh, boy.
Funny story, I went to the VFW over here for a meeting. I was briefing for my job. And one of the girls in the audience, I'm talking about my job at the county, and she says, oh my God, you were my recruiter. And she's like, and I don't even recognize her, which is the only bad thing about coming home. And slowly, as she's talking, I'm like, oh my God, I know who this is. Because I knew all these kids at 17 years old. I mean, these were babies that I was putting in the Army. And it was funny because I remember whenever I would recruit, I would look at the kids like if I wanted to be, if I was going to be a drill sergeant or a first sergeant, who would I want? And I would only allow kids in that I believed would make good soldiers. So I kind of had a very bad experience because I would let people go. Like if I didn't believe the kid was patriotic enough, I wouldn't let him join. And my station commander, of course, would get very angry and we'd fight back and forth. But I was not going to put somebody in that I was not proud to say was my recruit. So fast forward, actually September 11th happened while I was a recruiter. September 11th. So I'm up at the MEPS, and I have 3 girls that are on the floor getting ready to join, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning here in Portland. And don't you know that the big screen TV, here comes the Twin Towers, are going down the big screen TV, and we've got 40 kids in MEPS sitting there waiting to join the Army or the Marines or whatever, all the services. That was a goat show. Let me tell you, as soon as the first plane hit and the kids realized what was going on.
A goat show.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we had other terms for it, but a goat show
I'm trying to be
works.
politically
A goat
correct.
show works, yes, be nice.
They had to lock the MEPS door from the inside. They changed the door so these kids could not run out the door. These Marine Corps applicants mainly, let me out, I don't want to join anymore. And these kids were trying to get out of the MEPS. They had to put metal chains on the doors so that the kids couldn't get out. The place was like a madhouse. Kids were running everywhere, screaming. It was insane. And I got interviewed for the news. I remember they came in and all the news cameras were there because we were the only military in Portland. So it was like all the news cameras wanted to get our reaction of 9/11. And everybody wanted to talk to me. They were like, you're the only female up here. How do you feel being a female in the military today? And I'm like, a female in the military, why is it any different? I feel like I'm a female. Why is it any, well, you know, the Twin Towers just got to, you know, how do you feel? And I was like, the same as he does. I don't know why this is important. So it was interesting. 9/11 was crazy for me. I'll never forget it.
I can imagine. You, Middle East, I want to hear something
Okay,
about
so fast forward to E6, E7. That was when I reclassed because, okay, at E7, was not happy being admin anymore. I'd been through all these different units, been to all this really cool stuff. So I always wanted to do something else, and they said that with my computer background stuff, I should go MI. So I reclassed to military intelligence at the E7 level. I had gone through AIT as an E7, which is kind of a silly, I don't know if you've, but that's what they do it, is they send you, no matter what rank you are, back to AIT. So I had to go through AIT as an E7. And then I complained and I called up to branch and said, I'm not going out in the field as an E7 with private level knowledge. So I made them send me back to ANOC. So I actually went back to military intelligence ANOC. So I learned at least what an E7 should know. And then straight on to battle staff, which battle staff I was distinguished honor grad. So I was a female E7 and I got distinguished honor grad above everybody else. And then straight on to, as soon as I pinned on, as soon as I got my MI, they wanted to deploy me.
Oh boy.
So I literally got pinned E8 2011? No, had to be 2010. Got promoted in 2000. That can't be right. 2006. 2006, I got promoted to E8. Immediately after, I turned around and got deployed to Iraq. I had been in E8 for maybe 3 months, and they came in and said, you know what, we need somebody to take this company downrange. So they pinned my diamond on and said, here you go, you're taking this MI company downrange, your first sergeant.
Ah, so you were in a combat zone.
Yes. So then I picked up and took a company of reservists. They had been putting all of us active duty people around reserve soldiers, you know, trying to get more leadership in the reserve ranks in MI because they were having so many problems. And so I immediately turned around and deployed downrange as a first sergeant. Took my company downrange to Iraq.
You had how many tours in Iraq?
2 total.
2 total. Didn't get to Afghanistan.
Nope, never went to Afghanistan.
What did you bring from Iraq with you as far as experiences, thoughts?
That's really hard for me because I still have a really hard time with Iraq. I don't have problems with Panama or the Cubans or anything, but when it comes to like the religion piece and stuff, I guess because MI, we had to dig so much into the religion. We had to know so much about the other, you know, the other religions, the other people. It's very hard for me because I really have an in-depth knowledge of who they are as people. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard for me to see now the ignorance that's going around, and all this stuff going on in the news has been very, very hard on me. I see now how people just want to open their arms to everybody and allow all these people in. And unfortunately, I think that's a very bad idea because I've seen their ideology. I've seen who they are as people. And I have very, very few Muslim friends that are not, you know, that are not like ideologists or very into their religion or the infidels. But the few friends I have that are not like that, they're so few and far between that I think it's scary. It's scary to see what the U.S. has become and what we're doing.
It's interesting to hear that because that's the general consensus. We can't pinpoint where we are, but things have changed, and I don't think, I hate to go this direction, but not for the better. And I personally, I have my feelings on it, and I'm sure troops in World War II and Korea we weren't concerned about religion. We're concerned about staying alive. We're concerned about winning. We're concerned about going home, and still your heart hurts for those who didn't come home except in a box. And why on earth I would have a problem with what you just told me today, that personally, I don't want to be crass. I don't care about their religion. I'm here to stay alive.
But
I'm here to
unfortunately,
win. We are not politicians.
but that's
and
how we believe.
And what you just expressed, I don't believe we can do to the military.
Well, no,
The military is the military. It has a purpose.
I believe
We're
I felt
not ministers. We have
no.
ministers.
We felt the same way you did.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
what I'm saying.
Okay.
We honestly believed that, I don't care what your religion is. I don't care who you are. I'm going to stay alive. I'm doing my mission and I'm staying alive. What I have a hard time with is to be able to stay alive, you had to learn a lot about their religion and a lot about their ideology, or you couldn't stay alive. With the new weapon, the old-time warfare where it was tanks and you were on the battlefield.
Well, there's no battle line.
Yeah, there's
no battle
nothing.
line.
It's all. You have to know what they're thinking, and you have to get more into their religion to understand, or you can't protect. Our job was to protect the other soldiers. We had to do the military intelligence and analyze what was going to happen next. So we had to learn, how they think, so we could put it all together and make sure we saved those infantry guys, or we could give them the intel they needed so they wouldn't get, hurt, or we gave them the intel to who to go get so we could get this war over with. That was our job. But because we dug so much into the religion, I don't care who you are or what religion you were. I didn't care what color you were. I was there for a job, move out. But what scares me now that I'm home is that I do understand so much more about their religion, and I understand what the actual people and their thought process is. It drives me crazy that Americans are so ignorant. It's very hard to see that they just want to love everybody, and I'm good with that, but let's do it in a little bit more careful way.
Thank you.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying don't love people. I'm saying protect our people first. People are dying everywhere. I don't know.
Every facet of life, we have to earn what we possess. We have to earn it. We have to keep our respect, our honor, our integrity. And when we talk about immigrants coming to the country, which is an issue now, we've had immigrants all the time. I'm not an immigrant. I'm sorry, I was born here. So the country was built with immigrants, but those immigrants came and they worked hard. They denounced where they came from. They had a sponsor. They had a job. They made pots and pans. They were a blacksmith.
Yep.
They had their sponsor. They came to a certain part of the country. Where did they assimilate? And so those things have changed. That in order to maintain respect, you have to set up those guidelines, I would think. If you're going to come in and you want to be like me and you came here for then respect what we do, because we'd love to have you as a part of it.
But you have to respect what we do. They're trying to come here and change what we do, and that's what bothers me.
The change is hard to
Yes.
accept.
And I don't know if back then, I honestly don't know, but with the immigrant population, did they used to, if they committed a crime, did they get sent home? Did they lose their visas? I mean, I don't know how it used to be, but it seems like, if we have all these immigrants coming in and they're all in jail, I do not see why we wouldn't take them, and if they do commit a crime or they're convicted, and send them back to their home country. Why would we let them stay here? You've lost your... That's what I don't understand, and that's the hard part for me.
Well, the excuse is that we're not that way.
Wow.
That's not the Americans. Well, yes, it is.
Americans
Yes, it is.
are
Let's
about
have
staying alive.
Let's have some guidelines.
Yes.
Let's have some guidelines. Now, with those experiences, I want to touch on a couple of things.
Okay.
You just spent a month or so at Fort Lewis
Yes.
up here in Washington. Tell me what your experience was and why you were there.
Well, a year before I retired, I started really realizing when it was time to get out, I started really realizing that I needed to get some help for, I had some issues. I was depressed a lot, and and I wasn't sleeping, and the nightmares were pretty bad. So I ended up starting to go to counseling my last year in the military, because it was time to take care of me, because I knew I was going to retire. And my daughter was 13 at the time, and I thought, I really need to continue to be a single mother and to deal with this. I really need to make sure I'm better. So I started going to see a counselor. They diagnosed me with PTSD. They have assigned me a service dog who I love very much. He's sitting here on the table. And I started going through a bunch of counseling. Just recently I came home. I retired in May of 2014. Came home, and it's been very difficult. Coming out of a mindset of everything so organized and structured, and it's really a mindset that you have when you're active duty. And I've been active duty since I was 17 years old. So when I came out and retired, now I'm 40, and I get out and I come home to Oregon, which I love it here, don't get me wrong. I'm an Oregonian at heart. I wanted to bring my daughter back to go to my high school. but it's really rough. This is a very, very liberal part of the United States, and it's a very not military-friendly area.
Very much.
So it was kind of hard for me. So over the last year, I've gone through some struggles, and I had to attend. I had asked the VA to send me to a PTSD inpatient program, and what it was a 30-day program. They take you. It's actually at Fort Lewis because there's nothing down here in our state in Oregon. But up at Fort Lewis, they took me up there. I stayed there for 30 days, went through classes, and went through a bunch of, it's a bunch of different training sessions is what it is. And they're just trying to explain to you or give you tools on how to deal with your anxiety, your nightmares, the problems we're having with what I call civilians. You know, I have a real issue with the respect, all the kids that my daughter goes to school with don't respect their parents. I have a very hard time with a lot of stuff that's going on. So it just was too much. It just built, my anxiety levels were bad. So I went up there for 30 days, and it's actually a really neat program. They have a building that has 20 people there for PTSD, 20 people for substance abuse, and 35 for what they call the DCHV, which is homeless veterans. And it's a huge barracks, just like, you know, the old Army barracks, and we all live there in a room. We have morning and night meetings, and we all come together and we help each other, and it's a bunch of veterans. Vets helping vets. We help them with their substance abuse, get clean. They help us with our PTSD, try and, you know, we all trade stories and everything. But I was there for 30 days. I just got back last week. And like I said, she was the first service dog that they allowed to go in there, so that was neat. I got to take my service dog. But it was a great experience. I mean, I came back. I definitely feel like I'm a lot more grounded, and I've got some tools now in my toolbox to start working with to help me deal with some of the...
One day at a time.
One day at a time.
One day at a time. One moment at a time.
Yeah.
And what can I do to have a nice day today? And for
Exactly.
those people watching, in case you wondered what this little bag is doing here, this is Jade. This is Jade, a pretty little service dog, quietly asleep. And the first one, Tina told me that was accepted at Fort Lewis.
Yep.
Is that correct?
In the inpatient program, yep.
In the inpatient program. Now, I want to touch on a couple of things because
Okay.
you currently work with homeless veterans.
Yes.
You are working with Clackamas County Health and Human Services.
Yes.
And you are still a part of the Veterans Advisory Council, is that correct?
Yes.
Working with Clackamas County Commissioners and
Yes.
Health and Human Services, and they're involved in a number of projects. So you do a lot for veterans, and I've heard you say, my vets, my vets. So that possessiveness coming out of a leadership program is you're always looking. And for you and many people like you, that thought of leadership, that thought of caring for people that folks who haven't been where you've been really can't get a grip on because it's become a me society. It's become me. It's all about me and not about other people. Another thing I wanted to touch on was for the folks watching is that Tina has a dream and is registered with the federal government and the state of Oregon. And would you touch on Fort Kennedy for me, please, and what that's all about?
Okay. I started a nonprofit. When I very first got back, I came home and I realized I was out there in the community seeing a lot of vets. And I noticed that there were a lot of vets on the street. I noticed that there were a lot of signs that said, help me, I'm a vet. And that was disturbing to me because I don't like to see any veteran, living on the street. I don't think that's right. If you served your country, I think the government should be taking care of you. So I started working with the homeless, got hired at Clackamas County. I'm actually the Homeless Veterans Outreach Specialist. And it's a very small role. It's 20 hours a week, but they hired me and another partner. And we actually were hired to go out to the camps and the homeless camps and find these veterans and try and bring them in. Well, after I'd found all these veterans, I started bringing them into the county. I was like, told my boss, okay, I've got all these veterans that want help. What do I do? And she goes, well, there's nothing we can do for them. You need to send them to Portland. You need to take them and send them, 40 miles away and go get them someplace to live. So for me, that wasn't the right answer. So about 4 months into the job, I said, I'm going to start a nonprofit. I think what we should do is we should build a transitional home for veterans, almost like where I was up there in Fort Lewis, somewhere down here, somewhere in this immediate area. And so I came up with the idea for Fort Kennedy. It's basically going to be a transitional home / vet center that like all the vets can help each other. It's going to be for all eras, from World War II, of who's left, all the way up until new vets. And I want to have almost like a hotel to some extent that we keep and house and help the veterans for 6 months, get off the street, get a job, and get back into society. So I've been working really heavy on that. It's called Fort Kennedy. I have a Facebook page. It's Fort Kennedy, you know, and my website's just about to get up and running. I've only been doing it about 8 months. I have started a GoFundMe account, GoFundMe to help, and I've had a lot of support because I'm from this area, so it's really neat to see people I graduated high school with and stuff that I think it's pretty amazing. But they are my vets. They're your vets. They're our vets.
Our vets, yeah, that spent the time. And you do have a lot of connections with several counties, and I know you've received support from commissioners and folks at the state level. So that's all in the works, and we all wish you the best for that.
Well, thank you
and
very
that's
much.
an ongoing, testy project that you've taken on.
Yes.
And I'm glad it's not me involved at the level you're involved in. I'd have to check myself into some mental help, because I know what it takes to do that. And
I think that the best thing, though, is that I'm known as the first sergeant of the homeless population here.
known as the first sergeant of the homeless
and I think that
population
is amazing. I'll
in
take that with
Oregon.
honor. Yes, I'll take that position with honor.
Isn't that
So,
honor?
I do. I know all the homeless vets here. I really wish I could help them more, you know. I moved a couple in my house just for a little while, and I'm working on, you know, getting them on their feet and getting them out. But, yeah, it's just been a very interesting project I'm working on. I really want to help the veterans. I don't believe that anybody, if they serve their country, if they raise their right hand, that they should be living on the street. There's no reason for that.
And
So.
when you mentioned that there were 20 folks in your class, and then 20 substance abuse, and 35 that
We're
homeless,
homeless, yeah.
add those numbers up. Think back from World War I, World War II, Korea, even Vietnam. Where was that help? So when somebody says something about what the VA is doing or not doing, I have to disagree, because we have one of the best hospitals here in Portland. Fort Lewis, as you've stated, the work is
Yep.
ongoing. And my heart goes out to the people that work at the VA that are helping the veterans, because it is an ongoing process.
I just wish they had more money. I mean, that's the problem, is they aren't
Yeah.
funded enough, because the appointments and stuff, that all is because they're not funded enough. I think they do a great job. They just need more money to help more vets. That's the problem. They're not big enough.
Well, it's
So.
been a pleasure having you here and talking, and I wish we could talk more and discuss more about Fort Kennedy, but I'm sure that's something to look forward to in the future.
Yes.
And the homeless vets and your growth with the county, now that you've returned and they gave you a party. It's a pleasure, and for everybody watching, and like I said earlier, the thousands have gone before us and the thousands that come after. The gift that the country's been given by those people who volunteer, who spend those countless hours, days, and months and years serving the country, that never get their name mentioned, and they take that to the grave with them.
Yep.
So that's what this is all about. So we're going to sign off, and I just want to thank you, and I want to thank retired First Sergeant Kennedy T. for joining us today, and join us again when we get together for the Veterans History Project, and we'll sign off for now. And until next time, have a safe journey.
Thank you, JR.
Thank you.
God, that was an hour.